This video is sponsored by Wakeful Travel, the Mindful Travel Journal.
I was microdosing for a year and a half, I'd say, before I had my first genuine macrodosing experience where I participated in my very first magic mushroom ceremony. And it was during that kind of setting where I got to experience a shamanic dose. Let me just backtrack a little bit. What microdosing did for me was that it helped to enhance my sense of presence. And I remember, for example, my first few days on a microdose, I would go out and walk my dog, and I just remembered noticing the colors of the leaves a little bit more vividly, or in the morning having my morning coffee and just taking an extra moment to appreciate everything that I had in my life in that moment. So it just brought me back to a place of presence. It helped me to feel more at home in the present moment. And I remember thinking at one point, I'm like, this is what it probably feels like to have meditated for a long time, to the point where you trained your mind so much to be rooted in the presence that you start carrying the present moment with you. I never really understood what it was like to be fully present before I started microdosing. Like, I was trying to get into the practice of having a daily meditation practice, but it only worked so far insofar as I actually would remember to meditate. And, when you're going through what is so automatic in life, you wake up and you start thinking about all the things that you have to get done. It can be so easy. And you probably know this. I feel like this is an experience that many people relate to, is how do you remember to stop and go inward? Well, with microdosing, you don't have to try so hard to remember, because microdosing helps you carry that sense of presence with you. And over time, over the months, I noticed just my general level of anxiety being diminished. I certainly wasn't depressed anymore. Prior to microdosing, was convinced that some people are just not meant to be happy, and I thought I was one of those people. I was convinced that some people were just born into this world, or due to a number of different factors, whatever they may be. Some people just might have a lower default mood setting, and I thought I was one such person. But after months of microdosing, especially during COVID, this is 2020, I had another moment of realization where I looked around me, and my friends were all going through like a lot of turbulence in their lives because of quarantine, lockdown, insecurity, things like that. And I continued to be still. It boggled my mind at one point when I realized that I was the calm one out of all of my friends. That would have never been the case up until that point. So that's what microdosing did for me and has done. And I still microdose from time to time. I still am a firm believer in microdosing. However, what microdosing hadn't done for me, and something that I don't think that microdosing can do, is that it cannot heal the darkness within you. It can't bring your shadow, like every aspect of your shadow self, to the light, so that you can then work through them and become more fully individuated, like Carl Jung would say. Um, all of that healing work, like healing my wounds from childhood and even beyond that, that is work that I ultimately got to do thanks to my experiences participating in ceremony, experiencing higher doses of psilocybin, and also actually being engaged in modalities of healing with plant medicine, like proper healing modalities that don't just entail me experimenting on my own. So one of the biggest changes that's happened to me this year, and I don't even know if my own viewers know this yet, is, well, okay, this part of the story they do know. In March, I experienced my first magic mushroom trip, my first high dose magic mushroom journey within a ceremonial setting. And I worked with a group called Intronaut. for this. So they're a group of healers based in Vancouver, Canada. And during my first ceremony, I experienced a shamanic dose, which is higher than a heroic dose, which is something like 6 grams or something of, I think, blue meanies. It was a very potent strain. And immediately, so one of the reasons why I was drawn to working with this specific group is that they had a multifaceted team. I felt like I could be safe with them. There was someone on the team with a clinical psychology background, someone on the team with a medical background. So that in itself, I felt safe. The shaman was a spiritual teacher, but didn't resonate with that because I didn't consider myself to be a spiritual person. I just wanted to have an opportunity to journey in a safe setting. And that's what I ended up getting. I will talk more about my involvement with Intronaut a little bit later. My first high dose magic mushroom journey with Intronaut, I remember being taken to a place where I could see so clearly that this was a memory from my mom's childhood. I remember being taken to a place where I saw my mom as a child, and I saw her sister, and I could see in the background, they were in the jungles of Cambodia. That's where my mom is from. My mom had her arm around her sister, and as if she was trying to protect her younger sister. And just for a little bit more context, during this time, Cambodia was under a really dictatorial communist regime. 4 years, the Khmer Rouge was in power. By the end of their rule, a quarter of the population of Cambodia had lost their lives. So that was the context. Like, I am a product of intergenerational trauma for that reason. My mom is the type of person who, she is strong as nails. We are so different. We're so opposite. We could not see eye to eye very much at all growing up. But from that experience on my journey, I felt like I could understand why she was the way that she was. And I felt like I could truly empathize with her. Like, I didn't feel like I could do that in my relationship with her because she's the type of person who isn't okay with being vulnerable. She would prefer not to allow people in on her vulnerabilities. And I respect that now. I understand why that is now. I feel like I have an understanding of why that is now because of what I saw on my trip. So there was that. What a way to begin a journey. And then I went into the astral realm, and it was so beautiful. And I just remember being so humbled. I was like, okay, this is what everybody talks about. This is what all the psychonauts talk about. I get it now. And from there, I was then taken to a place where I was moving towards the light. I was like, okay, that was beautiful. That's beautiful. It almost felt like I was just had a front row seat in the best movie of my life, until all of a sudden it dawned on me. I don't know how I got there. This is just roll with it. I'd lost all sense of who I was, where I was, how I'd gotten there. I had even at this point on my journey, I had no clue who I was. And it was so confusing, but I tried not to stay in that place for too long. And then I remember thinking, oh, I'm dying right now. I fully believed that I was dying. And then the next thought was, I kind of don't want to fight this experience. So I didn't. And then I allowed myself to be taken into the light, and then I got reborn. And I was in a crib. I know. So those of you who haven't experienced a high dose psychedelic journey, if at this point you're thinking that's kind of weird, I completely understand. I probably would have thought the same thing. And in fact, I used to. I used to be one of you, probably. But the thing that I would hope people would be more understanding of is that regardless of whether or not somebody's journey is actually rooted in quote unquote objective reality, that doesn't even matter so much. What matters is whether the person is able to benefit from it. There's this idea of perception of meaning. Who cares what the actual experience has been, how real it has been, if the perception of meaning that someone gets from the experience leads to long-term positive outcomes, in their wellness, in their sense of overall well-being and happiness and things like that.